Welcome to another episode of the Trusted Advisor podcast and video series powered by the Retail Solutions Providers Association. Our goal on the pod is to accelerate the success of today's and tomorrow's leaders in the retail IT industry. I'm Jim Roddy, back with you again. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, this is a special episode of the pod where we're going to cover two important topics. So leadership is going to be one topic for sure. That's been our theme all year long. But also, first, we're going to preview a RetailNOW 2024 breakout session. If you're not familiar with RetailNOW, it's the Retail IT Channel's #1 trade show, education conference, and networking event scheduled for July 28th through 30th at the Paris Hotel in Las Vegas. RetailNOW will feature 5 education tracks and more than 20 education sessions, including the one we'll discuss today, Unlocking the Secrets of Selling to a New Generation of Customer. Our guest today is the moderator of that panel, and he'll also share parts of his leadership journey with us. Please welcome Michel Sirois, President of BlueStar Canada and past chair of the RSPA. Michel, welcome back to the Trusted Advisor.
Good afternoon, Jim. Glad to be here.
Always a pleasure to talk with you. And just so you know, so you met my daughter last year. She attended RetailNOW for the first time. And when you were introduced on the main stage, it was by a fellow French Canadian. And he really said your name the right way, like Michel Sirois. So anytime my daughter's seen your name, like I think one time we were traveling together, you called me on my cell phone and she said, "Is that?" And she tries to do her best French Canadian impression. So
nice.
Yeah. I should have
say thanks to her because sometimes the name is beaten around. Let's put it this way.
Yes, I've always said there's two groups of people. Some people never have their name mispronounced, like RSP Marketing Director Chris Arnold. No one's ever mispronounced his name, and then there's everybody else. So,
right.
Awesome. Well, let's dive into one of the secrets of selling to today's new generation. I want to do that. But before we do that, like, you're very passionate about this topic. And I know there's a lot of things that you're passionate about, right? You always bring the energy to it, but there's extra energy behind this topic of new generations and selling to them. So why is that?
You know what? If we boil it down, sales is in the lives of everybody, right? Every one of us. You don't have to be in sales to be selling. And it's a cliche comment, but it's more than ever a reality. So in our personal and professional life, we're constantly selling ideas, selling to our peers, selling to friends, and so on and so forth. So that's piece number one. Piece number two, I have spent my entire life in sales, and I got in sales by accident. But it is a phenomenal and is so much exciting journey because you never are in a comfort zone. It's not meant for everybody, but that's what basically excites me. Therefore, this new generation, and we got to define generation, by the way, because it's not the next generation. A lot of people are associating the new generation buyer with Gen X and Gen Zs, and let's demystify this. This is not the case, right? There's millennials, there's baby boomers that are the next gen buyers, right? Why? They've been affected and impacted by a lot of factors out there, and it's the new way of purchasing and buying, and therefore I always am in sync in trying to understand human nature and the impact of these factors to how people think and buy. So it's a thing of life. It's not a sales thing. It's a thing of life, right? And we're all exposed to it. Everybody. Accountants and CEOs and sales managers and your daughter and my daughter.
Yeah, we're all in the communications business. And then also, There was somebody who was a speaker at both a Retail Now event and then also one of the Blue Star Vartech events. Remember him talking about generations and made everybody realize you can't put us all exactly into one bucket. We're all a little bit of each in that way. And so you have to make sure you understand the tendencies of one generation, but it doesn't mean everybody fits into a silo perfectly. I'm curious if you agree with that as well.
I sure do, right? It's a when you're talking about a trend or trends, right? Silos are no longer,
Yes.
right? If you're talking about specifics, then fine. But when you're talking about trends and fundamental trends in businesses, as an example, it's no longer siloed, right? It's affecting all verticals or all pillars of I guess, the addressable journey.
Amen. So we're not going to dive into all the secrets
Mhm.
of selling to a new generation, right? We're going to devote some other time. We also want to ruin it for everybody and go, all right, I heard the podcast. I don't need to go to Michelle's breakout. So this is definitely a professional tease. So, but share
Sure.
with our listeners and our viewers, like one of your secrets of selling to a new generation, and then maybe we'll dive into it.
My ultimate quote: "It's not about us; it's about them." Period. And dive into this for a second, right? Um, it's not what's on our paper that counts. It's what's on their paper, right? And I think, and it goes back so far, right? In the 70s, you had books that were released on sales, right? Questioning and addressing and open-ended questions, and I could go on. What's the objective? What's on their paper, right? Not on yours. And unfortunately, we see so many organization and sales people talking about them. And the new generation buyers, not the next generation, the new generation buyers, I'm not going to be brutal, but I'm going to be brutal. They don't care what's on your paper. It's about them, right? They got challenges. They got, objectives. They have an agenda sometimes, sometimes not. But if you can have a real dialogue with the buyers, understanding the business reality and the personal impact on the decisions that they're about to make, then you've made some progress, very significant progress. It's not about you, it's about them,
Got it. You
right?
can't come in with your prescriptive, script that you have and you know what you're going to say. You have to react to them. So a few things that you said I want to follow up on. So you mentioned like, you need to know about them. It's not just about you. And then you talked earlier about, hey, we're all involved in sales because we're always communicating. Does this come down to, remember you said one time in another presentation, I know we're in B2B, but it's really P2P. It's person to person. Do you think like that makes it even more vital to care about other people and to try to understand other people? Because then once you care about that, you'll just be genuinely curious about what's on their paper. Do you think that ties in like a genuine care for people in order to sell to, the new generation?
Jim, boom, you're bang on. There's no doubt about it, right? The legacy sales approach, where it's business, um, used to be very lucrative and very positive and successful back when, but today it's no longer this, right? People are more educated, people are more on the alert, people often know more about you and your business than you know, right? The cliche comments about the car dealers, where you go into the car dealership and they, more about the car than they do. So we gotta be careful about that. And if this is the case, then what is the next level? It's understanding the individual that's in front of you, right?
Hmm.
And really understanding it. What's at stake? What if, as a pure example, if they make the wrong choice, what's the impact to them or on them, right? The professional and personal impact. Do they literally get fired? Do they get demoted? Are they being looked at non-delivery of success by their peers? That is very, very important. And that's the ultimate buying motive, right? Does it make sense? It's the
Yes.
ultimate buying motive, right? I want to be secure in the decision that I make, right? You never lose your job if you buy from XYZ, right? So these are the type of I guess behavior you got to have, which is P2P, people person to person, right?
Yeah, and it has to be sincere. I want to get your take on that because we've been talking
Yeah.
about we both have daughters, and I remember we had just my wife and I had built a new house. Our daughter was only a couple years old, so we're buying carpeting. So my wife was the one who's buying the carpeting. I'm taking care of my daughter, running around in the back of the rug store, and they had the break room open for the sales rep there, and a big sign on it said, "Give the customer confidence in the choice that they're making." And my wife brought in like pictures of our furniture and stuff. And she's like, "Do you think this would look good?" And of course, the other person's going, "Oh, yes, that would look great. That's a wonderful choice." And I thought, hey, wait a second. Is she actually giving her opinion or is she just following the rule back there? So I guess, can you talk about the importance of being sincere with your interests and being sincere with your advice in terms of sales and communication? Like, this is something that you have to, between 8 and 5, I'm going to care about people on my sales calls, but otherwise, that's not the way to do it. Like, the new way of selling is genuinely caring about people. Can you talk about that?
It sure is. You know what? At the end of the day, and I'll give you a pure example, right? Some papers and some books, our sales books are now saying the first question to ask is how are you?
Hmm.
Pause, right? The golden silence. How are you? Sincerely, I care about you. How are you? Before anything, right? Because a lot of people are I've got the habit of getting into the business right away, right? Talking about the business. And I religiously have practiced this, and the impact is phenomenal, right? Even people that are shy, people that are introverts, when you ask that question sincerely, majority of the time they'll open up and
Hmm.
they'll tell you about them, they'll tell you about the business, they'll tell you about their business challenges, they'll tell you about the buying motives, just like this, right? And that's really caring, right? But it's got to be, to your point, genuine, right?
Yes.
The cliche, how are you? And we all know that 70% is in the tone and 30% is the words,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So saying, how are you? And saying, how are you?
Yes.
Very different.
Yes. Very
That's
much.
care.
And that leads to, you used a phrase earlier, you said real dialogue. So can you talk about, in some ways, like, what do you mean by real dialogue? And maybe we've touched on it already. And besides saying, how are you, how do you spark real dialogue from a selling standpoint where it's not, two people playing a game or something that's really scripted, but you're still, addressing the outcome at hand? How do you get to real dialogue?
Honest and being sincere, it starts with preparing, right? You got to prepare. And preparing for any meetings or any communication or dialogues starts with number one, the individual in front of you. So get prepared. Understand their profile, understand where they come from, understand what's, to a certain degree, what they're passionate about. These are key things that I guess is in the back of your pocket when you start the dialogue, right? And then get ready and prepare well for their organization. And again, a very simple example that a lot of people don't put in practice. There's the financial reports on the web, right? And in the financial reports, there's such a thing called the 10K, right? The 10K report. the majority of us know about it. But in the 10K, there's the risk factors, right? The risk factors that the company has publicly stated. And once you have a dialogue, or you start the dialogue saying, how are you? And I hear that you are passionate about this and that, or you're you come from University ABC. When you get into, I've read your annual report, and in your 10K, the risk factor, this and this came up. What's your opinion on this? And a lot of them are going to go, wow, he has taken the time to deep dive into these, right? So these are small things. It doesn't take too long, right?
Right.
10K of ABC organization, boom. And there's a section called the risk factor. You go through this and you're tooled to have a real, and then it becomes more sincere. The person in front of you understands that you've taken the time and diving into the reports and so on and so forth. So these are some of the tools that we have at our disposal that we should be using when we really care about the conversation about to occur.
Yeah, and as you're saying that, Michelle, it's just popping in my head. Like we've talked about AI, the importance of AI, and how AI can be a good tool. But I've had some companies, I know they're subscribing to some AI service and just doing some search, and they put together some message. And so, Kathy Mead, our Vice President of Educational Services,
very well.
She was brought on board to the RSPA before I came on board, and I came on board over 5 years ago. I get emails because people subscribe to this AI service, and the way that they try to start the conversation is, it's so great to see you growing the RSPA with your recent decision to bring on Kathy Mead as your Vice President of Educational Services. It's like, that couldn't be more wrong. Like, you want to talk about you're getting my attention, but getting my attention in a way that says, clearly you don't care about me. Like, you're just here trying to get sales.
Correct.
Got it. Yeah. So it's got to be that genuine interest
and put some thought. People have got to think, how do I make a difference? How do I get in front of a customer, not being a one of, right? What do I got to know about the organization, the individual in front of me, that will set me aside from everybody else? Because pricing is number 5 on the list of buying decisions, right? Number 5, it's the 5th element, right? And buying decisions. People all focus on price. Well, people are willing to pay more with people that they understand, care about them, their objective and their business, right?
Yes. And have a value proposition that helps them get to their outcomes that they want. But you're never going to make that alignment if you don't care about them to ask about what their outcomes are and do the studying.
Correct.
Excellent. Well, before we talk about leadership, we're just going to pause here to let our listeners and viewers know about the RSPA, the Retail Solution Providers Association. RSPA is North America's largest community of retail technology VARs, software developers, vendors, and distributors. To accelerate your success through an RSPA membership, email membership@gorspa.org. Also, we want to say thanks to our annual sponsors who support the RSPA community and make this podcast and video series possible. Our gold sponsors are CoCard, Epson, Heartland, and ScanSource. And our platinum sponsor, Michelle, I'll put you on the spot. Who is the RSPA's platinum sponsor? If you get this wrong, many of your coworkers will not be happy.
BlueStar.
It is BlueStar, yes. So our platinum sponsor is BlueStar. And then finally, we mentioned at the outset, RetailNOW. Registration's now open for the Retail IT Channel's #1 trade show, education, conference, and networking event. This year's event is set for July 28th through 30th at the Paris Hotel in Las Vegas. For more information, visit gorspa.org/RetailNOW. RetailNOW is where the industry meets. All right, Michelle, I've got a series of questions for you related to leadership. You and I have talked leadership for many years just because we've both been involved in the RSPA. And then full disclosure, as the board chair for the RSPA, you were my boss for 12 months. You're part of the executive committee that serves as my boss for 3 years.
I was never your boss. I was a collaborator. I was never your boss.
That is true. That is true. I knew once the words
And
came when
that's
the word came out of my mouth.
and that's and that's basic for new leadership, right? You're not a boss anymore. You're a visionary, you're a guide, you're a facilitator. That's what you are, right?
Amen. Amen. So, you and I have talked about leadership to a degree, but I don't know if I've really taken a deep dive into, your leadership background. So, I guess first, for those who don't know you, how would you describe your leadership style? Like, there are a few overarching words or phrases that represent what you're striving for as a leader. And you just said one of them, like, not a boss, and you mentioned a few. So, talk about some of those words or phrases about
So
your
so
leadership style.
so number one, I'm not a boss, right? As a matter of fact, my title is rarely used voluntarily. President, and I always present myself as the leader of Canada. So that's piece number one. A lot of people, a lot of leaders focus on the ultimate objective, which is the number, right? The ultimate objective is the report card and the number. My leading or leader philosophy is this: if you do things right, the numbers are going to be at the rendezvous. Makes sense?
Hmm.
So instead of focusing on the numbers and on the weekly report and the daily report, and we could go on in this, and that's zero and ones. It is what it is. Do we have an impact on this? We do, but through true leadership to into our resources and how you excite them, you give them a vision, you give them a mission that they buy into, because today they've got to buy into the vision and the mission you are imposing on yourself and them, right? Very few individuals today will work for the profitability of an organization. Yet, so many of my peers are focusing on the numbers. And I think this is absolutely wrong, right? So that's one of the bases of my leadership. Last but not least, how do I make people grow? And how do I ensure that the incoming individuals are going to grow personally within the organization through the adventure we're offering? And that's not easy, right? This imposes that you understand them. This imposes how are you, right? This imposes what do you got in mind? What is your career path? What excites you? Blah, blah, blah. And once you can touch on these and put the puzzle together, the number and the results are going to be at the rendezvous. Make sense?
Very much, very much. So you're saying you focus on the things that are going to build people, improve people, help them grow. And if they're aligned with the vision, then the output's going to be what the output is. But don't shortcut it and only talk about the numbers and tell people you got to do whatever it takes to get the numbers. Am I understanding that correctly?
Absolutely. You're bang on, right? I'll give you an example, a pure example of mine that I've put in place. When I was positioned as the president of BlueStar Canada, my first comment to the entire community, to the entire team was, I would like not to be a one of. How can we reinvent the distribution practice of IT in Canada and have an impact on where this is heading? But my appetite is not to be a one of. And a lot of people bought into this. That's the vision, right? That's the vision. And are you with me or you're not? Let's have fun reinventing the practice,
Yes.
right? That's
Yes.
a vision. And if people buy into this, they'll work towards this. The results are going to be there.
Yes. And that's what really gets people excited is not just filling in the blanks or something shows up in the inbox and they process it, it goes to the outbox.
No.
It's being on, I think you just said an adventure. Like there's got to be a
Yes,
sense of adventure in the workplace.
yes, yes,
So that's your philosophy today here in 2024. How are
yes.
you different today as a leader than when you were when you had your first professional leadership role? And I know you're going to have an answer that says you're different in some degrees because you're always talking about unlearn and relearn. So I guess I'm curious to find out, what have you unlearned and then relearned as a leader, today compared to when you first started out?
Uh, some of it is exactly what I just told you, right? When I took the role of leading teams, it's a number of years ago, and it was the previous method, right? It was how much activity, how much time do you put into work? A lot of control of behavior. What are you doing? Right? You got to be in at 8:30 in the morning. You got to be here till 5 at night. Not too much time wasted. And it was the philosophy back then, right? And believe it or not, it still is for some organizations out there, right? They're into their inbox, monitoring what's going on, and but at the end, if they don't buy your vision, if they don't buy into your adventure, they're not going to be performing. But
Hmm.
if you get the few that are going to say, that excites me, that wakes me up in the morning, right? I think about that sometimes during the night. Then you've picked the right individuals, right? So I had to shift from one to the other, and it was not easy because leadership of large organization demand results, right? And they sometimes have the legacy philosophy of how many calls, how many face to face, how many this, how many that, all ratio based, right? But at the end, if you're doing the wrong thing 10 times,
Right.
you do 10 wrong things. If you do the wrong thing 100 times, you're doing 100 wrong things, right? So the number of activities is irrelevant. The right activity with the right attitude is what counts. So my
Well,
shift
yeah.
over the years was towards, right, the people. So
Yes.
people to people, right?
So thank you for bringing that up. And how do you blend that? Because I guess I feel fortunate in some ways where I learned some of my leadership, on the operations side of the business where it was way less numbers oriented. So it was way more people oriented, and that aligns more with today. But on the sales side, like you said, you do have to talk numbers. Folks do have to hit numbers. Can you talk about how you balance those productivity goals with also having the actual outcome, right? Like you said, hey, you don't want to mandate that somebody has to commit at this time and they have to make as many dials or face-to-face meetings. But at some point, you're going to want to measure those things, I would think, to some degree. Like it can't be to the point where you wake up and go, oh my gosh, like, the pipeline's completely empty. What's going on? Can you talk about how have you learned to blend those and find the right? Is it a balance? Is it a mix?
It's both to a certain degree, but there's golden rules that we've implemented within the organization and other organizations that I've worked with. And one of these rules is I manage activity or results, right?
Okay.
So it's either or. So when the results are not at rendezvous, here's the phrase: I allow myself the opportunity of diving into your activities and revisiting the activities with you, right? So it's no longer you're not delivering, therefore I need X number of sales calls additional. Again, I'll repeat one of my rules, which is 10 wrong things or
Hmm.
100 wrong things, right? Do more. No, do the right thing, right? So one of my rule is, guys, girls, activity or results. The results are at the rendezvous. I'll give you all the tools possible and I'll facilitate your journey as much as possible. But if the results are not at the rendezvous, I allow myself the opportunity of reviewing with you the activities,
Yes.
right? So it is Jim, sort of a blend, a blend of the two, right?
Yes.
The really the data driven activities and the number of activities. But again, we've got a deep dive into what style they take, how they approach customers, not the number of calls they make. That's, yes, we'd like more. Everybody would like more.
Right.
But if your ratio of success is 75%, it's one thing. If your ratio of conversion to POs is 20, then it's another discussion, right? And
Yes.
these are the type of things, it's much more strategic and data driven, where, by the way, AI will have the ability to really assist sales leaders into this, because we down the road will have the ability of having dashboards that are going to be indicating this, right? The conversion rate, the time it takes from the proposal to the PO, right? Why is it taking 90 days for some and 9 days for others? Is there something there? So it's a bit more strategic and data driven. So data and behavior. So it's sort of a mix, if I'm answering the question here.
Yeah, no, I think so. And I remember being taught early on, if somebody's missing their numbers, you have to investigate as the leader, as the manager.
Yeah.
Is it a competence problem that they don't have the skill, or is it a
Ah,
commitment problem that they're not, they have the skill, but they're not applying it enough? And sometimes it's a mix of both, but you have to zoom out first, and you can't assume it's one or the other. You've got to get closer and figure out. And if it's competence, then it becomes a teaching exercise. Like, no reason to get angry, right? You just go in and start teaching and guiding them. It sounds like that's kind of what you're saying here.
and the key, I guess, thing here is collaborating, right? You're not
Yes.
judging the individual, right? Most important piece is let's work together. Let's try to remember what I said. My passion is to make people better than they were. So walk your talk, right? If you're going to be doing this, spend the time with them. Spend real time with them. Don't have the phone lit up and the emails coming in, and through the distraction you get, you spend time with the individual. Because if you're going like this and like this and like this, the individual is going to say, he doesn't care about me,
Yeah.
right?
Yep. Yep.
Put all of this aside, take half an hour, 40 minutes, dive with the individual into his
Yes.
journey. Yeah,
And I'm gonna ask you a question about a learning experience. I'm gonna share a quick learning experience of mine that
sure.
ties in with that. Our management team was being taught about how to use discovery, and so discovery wasn't telling them what to do, but it was drawing out of them. But it was saying, "What do you think you should do? What do you think?" Like keep asking those questions. We had a brand new writer. I mean, she didn't know, up from down in the B2B writing world. And so I was told to go in and just use discovery and say, what do you think you should do? Well, what do you think? And she just started crying and being like, I don't know. Like, I'm looking for guidance and advice from her, being like, oh, okay. Like, you can't just use the same thing every time. And that's where it's always, you want to have the person discover.
Yeah.
But sometimes if the person doesn't know the answer, then you go, okay, let me bring the answer to you and we can talk through it together, right? Because if they don't have any knowledge. So that's why I want to ask you, like, is there a learning experience from early in your career that was impactful for you as a leader? I mean, Michelle, I can close my eyes and I picture she was sitting here, two other managers sitting here, and just seeing the tears and having to get tissues and all that. So I'm curious if you have a story or situation maybe like that, or hopefully better than that. Well, either way,
So so
a learning experience that really guides you today as a leader.
so 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 one or two. Number one, the culture of being able to fail, right? Big word, big quote, but lots of organization don't permit that, right? So earlier in my career, I had a VP of sales that I was reporting to, and I had miserably failed a quarter. And I got into his office emotional, and really beaten up. And he says, "What is this? What is this attitude?" Right? And then he imposed on me. He says, "You are allowed to fail. Failing is learning.
Hmm.
Failing is learning. If you don't do anything, then you're not learning anything. But failing is a lesson, right?" And I stepped back and I said, "Really?" He says, "Really." And I mean it, right? That was very impactful for me. And today, that's the philosophy that I have within the organization, right? You are allowed to fail, right? You are allowed to have bad months. You are allowed to lose a large sale, but you got to learn from it,
Yes.
right? You got to learn from it, right? So that's piece number one. Piece number two, we all do this. We all do, and you've heard me saying this, Jim. Working in the business or on the business,
Yes.
right? So the VP of Motorola at the time, I was diving into the deals, right? I was literally leading the deals. Called me up on a Friday afternoon and he says, "What are you doing?" I said, I'm driving the business. I don't have a leader. I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "You can't do both. You
Hmm.
can't work in the business and on the business at the same time. I need you to work on the business." Okay, I get that. That was one of the toughest journey ever that I've come across
Hmm.
because I'm passionate about sales. So I was jumping on deals and wanting to lead the deals with the team, but I was leading the deals, right? Excited about this. Wrong. A leader should let their team lead the deals. If they land the deals, great. If they don't land the deals, lesson learned. We fail, we learn, right? So these are two that really impacted my managing style for sure.
No, I appreciate you sharing, and I know you and I have talked before about like when I'm, again, when you were my, I guess would say supervisor, you were the chair, I was, CEO, and I remember you saying like you would get excited about the deal, and there are things that I get excited about, and I'm like, get out of my way, I'm gonna go do this on my own, and I do think you're the angel sometimes sitting on my shoulder. I'm saying to myself, should I be doing this, or should I be delegating this to somebody, or should I be
Correct.
teaching somebody how to do this? And I will say it's had an impact. I can always get better at it, but it's again, you've been whispering in my ear, even though you haven't been here in the office, in terms
Pleasure.
of it. Yes, is this something? Is this in the business or is this on the business as it should be? So
Right. And
I
and and believe me, it is not easy. And we can't do 100%, right? You 100% in the business, you're not a leader, but a leader, yes, we will get involved in the business at one
yes.
point in time, once in a while, right? But you got to take a step back saying, am I 70% in the business and 30 on the business? Because the business needs to be overlooked. The business needs a vision. The
Hmm.
business needs next year's right objective, and I could go on.
Amen. I agree with you. A couple more questions for you. The first
Sure.
is about leaders who you've looked up to as mentors and who've helped shape your leadership approach. Can you share some of those folks? And then also, what do they do or say that's had a lasting impact on you? And I'm sure one that you're going to mention, we'll start off, is the founder, the late founder of BlueStar's, Steve Kuntz, who passed away late in 2023. I guess, can you talk about his impact and then talk about some other folks who have had an impact on you and how they impacted you?
So so absolutely, and we miss him a lot. But Steve put in practice some of the golden rules that I have, right? And he's nurtured some of them. As an example, he was the CEO of the organization. He did every job within the organization, knew it because he did it,
Hmm.
right? But we had the ability to fail, right? And he always wanted us to learn from this. So So it solidified some of the thinking that I've had for a number of years. Second thing, he could have deep dive in the business, right? He had all the rights in the world. He knew the business inside out. He knows the vendors inside out. He knows the VARs inside out. He could have easily gotten in the business and say, move aside, move aside, move aside. But he didn't. And he believed in the leadership team that we are today. He really believed in who we were and what we were doing, right? And respectfully agreed with our vision of things. Last, he had a beautiful vision, right? And when he communicated his vision, talk about somebody that cares for the others. Steve did care for all of us, right? He was involved in so many charity things. Steve really cared about people, and it showed, right? So many people are saying, "Oh my God!" When I sat with him and had a conversation, he really cared,
Right.
right? Going back to topics you said a couple of minutes ago, right? So he inspired us. He really, really inspired us. So that is one,
Yes.
right?
Great. Thank you for that. Who else?
Beyond him, it was a tough answer, and I'll tell you why. Um, One that I follow, he's not a leader, but he leads a lot of leaders, is Simon Sinek,
Hmm.
right? I follow Simon Sinek because Simon Sinek's ultimate objective is to leave a better world for us. That's his ultimate goal, right? And when I heard him say this a number of years ago, it really resonated with me, right? So he gives tips, right? If you follow him, he gives tips of, the new leadership style. So I follow him quite a bit. Last, I don't have other ones that I follow a lot. Why? Because there's so much out there, right? And you gotta have the humility of saying, okay, I'll pick a piece of him and a piece of her, and that resonates with my vision of things, right? I do not believe that today there's a leader that owns all the answers.
Yes.
Sorry to say, but right, and there's people that are extremely popular out there. Good for them. But I prefer getting pieces from a number of leaders or coaches that
Yes.
give me what I'm looking for, right?
Yeah, I'm glad you said it that way because, like Tony Robbins, he's obviously been very, very successful. But every time I
Correct.
see him, I'm like, he's just way too much for me. Like, I could not. Like, if you have me beat Tony Robbins, I feel like such a phony. But some people love him, right? And there's everything about him. So and I guess that's the whole thing is you have to find your identity as a leader, and so that depends on. It's not like I'm a big fan of Jim Collins and all his books
Yeah.
and always
Yeah.
quoting him and his principles and stuff like that. But
Great
so I
guys, by
guess.
the way.
Yeah, and so
Great
that's what I
guys,
guess
by
you're
the way.
saying is you have to find somebody who aligns with your personality, your vision, and you can learn from them.
And not, and that's Michelle's opinion, not one have got the answers to everything, right? Not anymore. It is complex out there, right? We're being bombarded by all kinds of messaging. We've got the laptop, we've got the phone, we've got our iPad, we've got so much things going on in a given day. It is becoming a challenging environment, right?
Hmm.
So
Absolutely. Yeah, I have more podcasts I subscribe to than time I could listen to during the day. I'd never be able to
correct,
get any work done. So, last
correct.
question for you, Michelle. Besides following Simon Sinek, what are some activities that you do today to keep you sharp as a leader? Right? We talked about unlearn and relearn. How do you maintain and improve your skills after many years as a leader?
One of the most important appointment a week that I have is with myself in my calendar. I have a rendezvous with myself every week, right? Why? To self-educate, right? And I take this very, very seriously. Phone down, laptop down, and I self-educate, right? And podcasts, papers, and I could go on. So I gotta do this because the last thing that I want is for me to be in the back of the room or the end of the line where people are way ahead of me saying, "Hey, you're from the past."
Yeah.
Because if you don't unlearn and relearn, you are not moving forward, in my opinion, right? Then you become a dinosaur. And the last thing that I would want for myself as a leader is to become a dinosaur,
Yes.
right? And so many are becoming dinosaurs for lack of discipline, lack of curiosity. Maybe they're at the end of their career, there's no appetite, and I can understand that. A lot of people in our channel are getting to the end of their career and they've done well, right? And some of them may say, you know what, I'm leaving in a year from now or something like that. But the ones that want to stick around for a number of years, it's a phenomenal environment to to nurture yourself and to better yourself. And the tools are out there, my friend. The tools are out there,
Yes.
right? The RSPA, the podcasts, the publications, and I could go on. We all know about them, right?
Yeah, I guess that's if there's a final lesson for folks is there's no shortage of tools that can help you in
No,
the format that you want to consume it in. Because I've talked to some people, anybody who sees on the YouTube channel, like these are real books behind me, that I've read. I'm big into book reading and some podcasts. Some people don't like reading books, and it doesn't mean well you can't learn, right? There's tons of opportunities out there. So you have to find the ones that work for you.
to give you a quick example, right?
Yes.
You and I are aligned with the Challenger sales book, right?
Yes, we are.
And a lot of people are saying, I have no time for this, right? Well, you buy the audio book. The audio book is 19.89 or something. It's not even
Yeah.
$20, right? Get in the car, connect to the speaker in the car, and you just listen, right? There's no reason not to. You gotta make a commitment with yourself. Take an appointment with yourself, right? And stick to it because it's easy to say, "Oh, I'll pass this week." Wrong,
Yes.
wrong. Stick to that discipline. That's the most important advice that I would give to leaders today.
Yeah, so almost like your regular physical workout schedule, you have to have a regular leadership improvement schedule you have to stick to, or else you'll, like you said, you'll eventually become a dinosaur.
Correct.
Excellent. Well, that does it for this episode of The Trusted Advisor. If you enjoyed our discussion, be sure to subscribe to the RSP YouTube channel and the Trusted Advisor podcast so you never miss an episode and so you never turn into a dinosaur in the Retail IT channel. I'm going to have to insert that into all future outros here. So also be sure to register for RetailNOW 2024. Again, that's July 20th through 30th in Las Vegas, featuring a diverse high-tech expo hall, plenty of networking opportunities, and several great education sessions, including unlocking the secrets of selling to a new customer. Before we go, thanks again to Michel Sirois from BlueStar Canada for sharing his wisdom with us today. Thanks also to RSP Marketing Director Chris Arnold for his production work, Joseph McDade for our music, and last but not least, thanks so much to you for listening. Our goal at the RSP is to accelerate the success of our members in the retail technology ecosystem by providing knowledge and connections. For more information, visit our website at gorspa.org. Thanks for listening, and goodbye, everybody.
Take care. Bye bye now.